Hi everyone. Sounds like you're interested in trying your hand with quizzes in D2L. What I'm going to do is I'll show you a really simple, easy quiz to begin with, and then if you're going to go down this approach over time, some tips on how to create a variety of different tests and to make life easier for yourself. So the easiest way to create a quiz is just simply to go into quizzes, go new quiz, give it a name. Typically, you have categories based upon your units. Add questions. You want a new one. There's your true false. And you can go save and do a new one. So it's going to give you another true false question. Um, or you can just click save and now go a multiple choice question and so on. Um, here, green. And don't forget to check off the correct answer. Okay, so the thing about creating a quiz this way is that if you decide to go back and edit this quiz and you go, oh boy, I don't really want this question anymore for this year, I didn't really discuss this, and I delete it, then it's gone and you, you'll never get it back. So creating a quiz using this method is quick and easy, but uh, going down the long route, if you want to constantly be creating a variety of different quizzes using a question bank, that's a much better method of doing things. So I'm just going to click that on editing here, and so there's my quiz, and I'm just going to go save and close. And what I can do is I can preview that. There it is right there. Start the quiz. And that's what my test would look like. Okay, easy peasy. So let's figure out how to do, look at the long term in creating question banks and so on. So you'll notice here I've got a question library. And what I do is I never create a test by typing the questions directly into the test. Instead, what I do is I go into my question library. I go, all right, I created new sections. Each section is the name of my unit. So, for instance, physical, geography skills or natural resources, whatever it might be. Once I've created a section, then what I do is I click on the actual section, and now I'm going to create my questions in here. So I'm going to go new, true or false. And there we go. So I eventually build up a whole bunch of multiple choice, short answer, matching type questions in here. So I have this gigantic pool of questions. Now, once I've created all of my questions in here, um, well, actually, let's look at creating questions a little bit more. So let's create a multiple choice question. So rock. Actually, no. Let's go. All right, so the correct answer is igneous. What we want to do typically is randomize these answers for each student. So that means that when the test comes up, the correct answer, they'll see the exact same question, but the two students will have different correct answers. For one person, igneous will be A. For another person, igneous will be C. So it means that it's far more difficult for them to cheat in a large classroom setting. So another thing you might want to keep in mind is when you go, you want to add, for instance, none of these. So for instance, I'm not going to say none of the above because if it randomizes the questions, this could come first. So say none of these or all of these instead of none of the above and so on. Now you can include hints or feedback. Feedback's handy so that you can explain why each one of these are incorrect, but it's going to take you a really, really, really long time to create all your tests if that's what you're doing. So we'll just save this. And now let's say you've typed in all of your questions. So now we want to make a new test. So let's click on new quiz. Uh, I like having categories, so typically I would add the categories. Now when we go into add edit questions, I'm not going to um, create questions in here, but instead I'm going to be importing them. But before I do that, I'm going to create a section called multiple choice, true, false, and matching. And I click on this. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to create my other section, which is going to be long answer. What I want is that when the test gets scrambled, I want to make sure that all the true, false, multiple choice questions, they get scrambled together, but I don't want a long answer question to be coming in the middle of all of my multiple choice. So I've created a section for this, and now I can import all of my true, false, multiple choice stuff from my library. So I go into my physical unit and I just check off some of the questions that I would like. And there we are. We got some true, false in there. We're going to add those. All right, so those are all of my true, false, multiple choice questions. And now I want to go in. Whoops, I shouldn't have clicked add, done editing. Now I want to add all of my long answer questions. So I'm going to click on this, import them from the question library. Go find my written responses. Now remember that the computer will automatically mark all of these wrong. So, the students shouldn't get all upset when they see they got a 35% on the test because it's only marking the multiple choice questions correctly, multiple choice true false questions correctly. You've got to manually override the other ones. So now I've got my two sections here. Now here's some of the tricks. First of all, shuffle questions at the quiz level. So this shuffles sections at the quiz level and does not. So I want to do that so that each student is going to have a different order for the questions, but they get the exact same questions. I also like putting only 3 questions on a page. Now this makes a lot of people angry. What it does is it means that these first 3 questions, when I click apply here, these first 3 questions appear. Once you answer them and they go to the next page, they can never go back. And yes, that's frustrating because suddenly you go, oh, I remember the answer to that. Well, unfortunately for this, you can't go back and change it. And what that does is it prevents the student from looking over at their neighbor's screen and going, oh, the answer was igneous. And now they go back and they change it. It makes it really, really difficult when you're sitting in a large classroom setting for them to cheat because everything's so mixed up. So I would highly suggest that you do this. And then let's see. Now, You're going to set up your test in advance. You don't have to hide this from users, but instead you typically have a start date. So, okay, we're going to have it on Monday. It's going to start at 9 and it's going to end at 10 o'clock. Now, the problem with this is if this was a regular classroom setting, I'd definitely put a hard end date. That means it's going to click off and the kids can't see it. We'll throw that up on the calendar. But if you're doing this emergency e-learning, this is not what you want to do. You want to post an open-ended thing. Fine, it starts on this day, but you're not allowed to put an end date on this. So what you want to do is you want to have a due date. So, hey, this should be completed by the end of the day on that day, right? But it's just a recommendation. All right, so it's not going to turn the test off. It'll still be accessible, but what it's going to do is flag all those students who didn't complete it on the day that you made it due. When it comes to assessment, I would be hesitant to allow attempt to be automatically graded. If this is like a practice quiz, just true, false, multiple choice, sure, go for it. Check that off, give them immediate feedback. But if it's got written answers, then obviously this doesn't make any sense because it's going to freak them out with the really low marks that they get. If you've got your grades set up, then you would attach it as a grade item. I'm not going to get into that. Now, quizzes. If it's for the students to just test their knowledge prior to the real test, give them unlimited attempts to complete it. If this is your emergency learning and they're doing online quizzes for the first time, you might want to give them 2 attempts. And what's going to happen is the highest attempt is the one that goes into the grade book. I like this. It works really well. It gets the kids, well, it's mastery learning, right? So I'm going to give them 2 attempts. You can fiddle around with this. You can average the attempts. If you figure that the kids are just going to breeze through and answer everything incorrectly so they can see the questions and then do it over again, well, give them the average of the attempts and that'll bring it down to 50% if they do that strategy. Submission views. Now, this is pretty critical here. So when it comes to submission views, this is what are they going to see once they're completed the quiz. So typically, you're not going to show them anything. You might show them their overall score if you're going to have it automatically graded. But let's say this is a practice quiz. So the practice quiz, they're supposed to be learning from this. So yes, I want to show them the questions, and I want to show the questions that they answered incorrectly. The ones that they got correct, we don't have to show them those. But I like showing them the questions they answered incorrectly, but I am not going to show them the answers. Go back to your notes and figure out what the correct answer is. That makes it a good learning process. So if that's works for you, then I would suggest that sort of approach. If it's a real test, what you're going to do is have it as no, but after you've marked it and everybody's written the quiz, you're going to show them all the responses or all the correct answers. So you're going to have to go back in and change this and show the class average if you want. And I think that's about everything that you want. Now I'm just going to show you just a little practice quiz here, show you how you can be a little creative with the multiple choice. So for instance, here's a diagram or a map or whatever you have in your course. In my case, I just want the kids to be familiar with this big rectangular province is not the Pacific Ocean, right? So we want them to be familiar with basic locations in Canada. So I've numbered the map, and then I've given them all the names of the locations. And then all I've done here is with the matching thing is I say, okay, number 1 is 1. So it's a bit odd. That's why it's coming up 1-1. But you'll see when you create your matching what I'm talking about. For instance, Northwest Territories, number 12 here. So I just click on my drop-down menu and pick number 12. And then keep on going through, selecting all the, oh no, I got Saskatchewan wrong. But I don't think I'll get into that. I don't want to make this video too long. So hopefully that gives you a flavor for what can be done in creating quizzes in D2L.